Welcome to this video on design thinking. My name's Annie and I'm going to be taking you through this topic today. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur or you'd like to see how you could utilise the principles of innovation within your job hunt or future career, hopefully there is something in this session for you. We'll be covering all things innovation and creative thinking in this video, but particularly using the principles of design thinking as used by Stanford University. We'll be working through these design thinking principles step by step with top tips in terms of how you can utilise each of the stages in different scenarios, whether that is developing a new product or service, or thinking about how you can utilise them to get a head start on your own personal development and career journey. So, what is design thinking? Design thinking is a problem-solving approach that you can use to come up with ideas, solutions, or innovations in all sorts of situations. It focuses on people, empathy and understanding. The better we understand the people we want to help, the better solutions we can come up with. So Stanford University describes design thinking in 5 stages, but before we come to that, we thought it would also be helpful to discuss what we mean by innovation. There are lots of different ways different people define innovation. We might think about entrepreneurship, financial profit, or improving things for a customer. The customer might not be a business client though, they might be a friend, a team member, a colleague, or even yourself. So we could say that innovation is about making things better. Some definitions of innovation, however, focus on the process, highlighting that organisation, project management, and communication are just as important as the initial idea in making a project a success. However, on the screen, you can see this quote: "Great innovations are the simple ones that make you slap your forehead and say, 'Why didn't I think of that?'" I like this definition because it shows that innovations don't have to be complex, and actually really simple changes or solutions to problems, perhaps a change to the way you approach your career, are also innovations. Because you don't have to be a budding business owner to be an entrepreneur. So back to design thinking. As mentioned, at Stanford University, they describe the design thinking process in 5 stages, starting with empathy, really understanding the customer, client, or person that you're working with and wanting to improve things for. As we go through each of the 5 stages, we can really see why design thinking is a little bit different to some other innovation processes, and why it might be helpful in our everyday lives. What's also important to mention before we go through the 5 stages is that design thinking isn't linear. You might follow the steps in this order, but you can also jump around at different points in your innovation journey. And you may well find yourself back at the beginning multiple times in order to come up with the best end product or service possible. So after empathy is define. This stage means that this process can be used to solve problems we don't fully yet understand. The definition stage enhances our ability to question. In design thinking, you question the problem, you question your assumptions and the implications that these might have. Next, ideate. The ideation stage is all about throwing ideas out there, and we'll be focusing on this quite a bit as we go through the video. Finally, prototyping and testing are really key. Design thinking is an iterative process, so that means it involves ongoing experimentation through prototypes, testing, and trials of new concepts, ideas, and solutions. It might sound quite theoretical for now, but innovation is everywhere. And I'm going to share a few examples with you now of where you can see the design thinking process in action. So first up, the reintroduction of flip phones. With this innovation, we've seen the merging of the functionality of smartphones, high-end smartphones, with the portability of a noughties era flip phone. So where's the design thinking in this? Not only have Samsung, with their recent emerger into the folding phone market, empathised with this innovation by identifying a user need to merge functionality along with size together with affordability, but you can really see the prototyping and testing here as well. There have been various attempts to achieve these results in recent years, some of which have reached consumer markets, but problems have often been identified. For example, there have been screens that split and peel when you try to use them. So it's often been back to the drawing board to try again, until this most recent attempt. Another example is ABBA's use of digital avatars as part of their ABBA Voyage tour, which blends digital technology with live performance. ABBA, the members of the band, are in their 70s, but they still want to give audiences the classic experience from back in the day without touring the world and performing live every night. Through innovations in sound technology and motion capture, more and more people can see them as they appeared in 1977. And finally, in the fashion industry, customers are more and more seeking ethical or environmental certifications without compromising on quality. Lots of companies are currently prototyping, testing, and releasing different variations on the concept of vegan leather without resorting to plastic. One recent example of this is called Milo Unleather and is made from fungus. It was debuted on the catwalk by Stella McCartney, and Adidas have now also used it to recreate a more sustainable version of their iconic Stan Smith tennis shoes. I'm sure you can think of many others, but what is the impact of using design thinking when coming up with ideas and releasing products and services? The impact can be huge, and again, I'm going to share a few examples with you here that illustrate this. So the introduction of extra springy trainers fitted with a carbon fibre plate in 2016 has had a massive impact on competitive and recreational running. In fact, every single running world record from 5 kilometres all the way through to the marathon has been broken since these hit the market. It's also important to remember that innovations don't have to be about products. A really big innovation that has been gaining popularity in recent years is the 4-day working week. There have been trials going on in the UK, but in Japan, Microsoft have already conducted a trial which demonstrated a 40% increase in productivity alongside increased well-being among staff. So starting with empathy and human-centred approaches can be just as good for profit as well as for people. Finally, when it comes to design thinking, we've already said that the process isn't linear and it isn't limited. This means we don't yet know where some of these innovations will take us. For example, what could the future of our planet look like as scientists continue to experiment with an AI-engineered plastic-eating enzyme, which has been developed with the ability to eat entire plastic containers in weeks instead of months? So we've given you a little introduction to design thinking and some examples of how these principles are currently being used to create impact when it comes to innovation. But I want to take you through each of these stages one by one now with some tips about how you can implement each stage in your own innovations and lives. The first stage is empathise. In some examples, we've looked at how we can see some of these innovations being used to design products or services that meet real human need. But how can you make sure this is the case? Throughout our life, we develop assumptions. shortcuts or ways of understanding information, which we use to make sense of and explain the world around us. Everybody has a different set of assumptions though. So if we are designing a product or a service for others, we need to let go of our own assumptions and adopt the mindset of a beginner. For example, as photography technology has become more advanced, designers have also adopted a beginner's mindset to make it more accessible and mean that users don't need to understand the numbers and controls on a complex early camera. So, for example, now modern cameras will use a variety of symbols to represent the automatic camera modes which are suitable for beginners. For example, a night sky for night mode, or a runner for sports mode. More recently though, smartphone cameras have made this process completely automatic, identifying the subject and the correct mode for the user, meaning that you no longer need to have a fancy camera or in-depth knowledge of photography to take really high quality images. The other side of beginner's mindset is about learning. By letting go of our assumptions, it allows us to be curious about the world and other people's experiences. By adopting a beginner's mindset, we can really dig under the surface and ask questions. This comes down to active listening. So some tips for adopting a beginner's mindset through active listening. First up, pay attention. Look at the speaker directly if you can, and avoid being distracted by environmental factors around you, including phones and emails. Notice the speaker's body language. Also, try and refrain from side conversations when listening in a group setting. Next up, ask open questions that don't guide the speaker or sway them based on your opinions or assumptions. Questions starting in what, why and how can be helpful in this situation. Provide feedback. Reflect what has been said by paraphrasing. For example, what I'm hearing is, or it sounds like you're saying. Ask questions to clarify certain points. For example, what did you mean when you said this? Or is this what you mean? By summarising regularly, you can make sure that you've heard what you think you're hearing and have prepared the right actions to follow. Finally, respond appropriately. Assert your opinions respectfully and where possible, find out more about the preferences of the person that is speaking to you so that you can adapt your style to suit theirs. And think about how you can suspend judgment. This might be accepting periods of silence, because total quiet will allow you and the speaker to think about what has been said. Ultimately, with a beginner's mindset and through active listening, you give yourself the opportunity to learn more, to be curious, asking yourself, where is this person coming from? What's important to them? Or what are they trying to achieve? Considering how the person feels about what they are talking about is a really important step to adopting a beginner's mindset and really empathising as this first stage in the design thinking process. So next up, the definition stage. Define is all about identifying the problem that you're wanting to solve. This might sound simple, but this stage is important. It is through this process that you really dig under the surface of what is going on and set the scene for the next stage where you start to come up with ideas and solutions. So you can go some way to defining the problem by evaluating the information that you've gathered during the empathise stage. But to really get to the bottom of this issue, you need to think about redefining the problem. To explore this concept, I'm going to use an example. I want you to imagine that you are the owner of an office building and your tenants are complaining about the elevator. It's old and slow and they have to wait a lot. Several tenants are even threatening to break their leases if you don't fix the problem immediately. Now, a traditional approach to problem solving would start by identifying the problem. Okay, so it sounds like the lift is too slow. If you take this at face value, you might respond with the following solutions. Install a new lift, replace the existing motor, or change the algorithm so that the lift responds more quickly to certain requests. Okay, that's one way of solving the problem. But if we spend some time exploring and defining the problem and really empathising with the tenants, we may come to a different conclusion and perhaps redefine the problem. So instead of saying the lift is too slow, we may say that it's the waiting that's annoying. That's what's really at the root of this issue. So this new problem gives us many more options in terms of solving the problem. Because even a faster lift will still require waiting times, and so that core problem will still be there. So to think about solving the issue of the wait time, perhaps we can play music or a podcast to entertain people while they're waiting. You could put up a community notice board or even mirrors, because we love looking at ourselves. What about installing hand sanitizer, which gives us something to do while we're waiting? Or even thinking about staggering the lunch breaks of the different offices to decrease demand at peak times across the day. Yes, there are situations where the lift genuinely may need replacing, but before we jump to costly conclusions, we need to make sure we are fixing the right problem, the problem at the root. So we've defined or redefined the problem. The next step is all about idea generation. When it comes to ideation, no idea is a bad idea. And it's all too easy to dismiss ideas off the cuff and say, that wouldn't work because of this, that, or the other. This only serves, though, to stifle our creativity and limit our possibilities. And at this stage, it is all about creativity. In the words of Linus Pauling, a former Nobel Prize winner, if you want to have good ideas, you must have many ideas. So here is one method that you can use to stop you in your tracks before saying no to an idea. It's called the 3 I's, or illegal, impractical, and immoral. This method is about intentionally coming up with ideas that we would otherwise be quick to write off. And there's some examples of this when it comes to world-changing inventions that we now really rely on. When Thomas Edison invented the light bulb in 1879, it was denounced as being entirely impractical. In fact, it was described as a conspicuous failure. Now, if we look a bit further into this, it's revealed that it wasn't the light bulb itself that was seen as impractical, but the fact that there was as yet no way of carrying electricity long distances and into every home that made the whole idea seem ridiculous. But with this innovation, Edison redefined the problem when it came to efficient and effective home lighting. It may not have been practical at the time, but he posed a challenge to the scientific community, who were then able to address a new problem about the transportation of electricity, which meant that his idea was revolutionary just a little later than he might have expected. Some other examples include liquid nail polish, which was initially described as a strange and unique fad. Not so much because it was impractical, but more because many questioned its safety, particularly when compared with nail powders and pastes, which were the previous methods of colouring nails. So promoting this new liquid nail polish was perhaps seen as immoral. Finally, Coca-Cola, as we know it today, was invented initially as a cocaine and caffeine-filled alcoholic drink that people with chemical addictions to drugs could use to wean off their addictions. However, during Prohibition, alcohol became illegal and was thus removed from Coca-Cola. And later, the cocaine too was removed from the drink, creating the drink that we know and love today. So, light bulbs were impractical, nail polish was immoral, and Coca-Cola was illegal. But how might you use this model when it comes to innovation? First up, it could be a method that you use to remove your own creative barriers and start the mind mapping exercise when working with a group or on a group project. You might be a bit nervous about sharing ideas, or there might be a more timid person in the group who thinks their ideas might be made fun of. To show this isn't going to be the case, and to get the group warmed up, you could start by sharing the worst possible ideas. And these might be things that are illegal, impractical, or immoral. For example, let's bribe our tutor to give us a good mark. Or how about we do no work ourselves and instead steal the other group's final product or presentation at the last minute? You may cast these ideas off immediately, and absolutely, I am not endorsing bribery or stealing, but they may help build group rapport and get you talking. Additionally, is there anything that you can learn from these ideas? Again, no bribery or stealing, please. But instead of bribing your tutor, you could request a meeting to share your preliminary ideas and help build on them. Or a friend in another group may be more than happy to help talk through your ideas if you're stuck on a certain theory or aspect of a project. Once you have your long list of ideas, good or bad, Linus Pauling goes on to say, most of them will be wrong, and what you have to learn is which ones to throw away. So yes, we will hone and evaluate our ideas later on, perhaps combining them or tweaking them. And it's at this stage that we might want to loop back round to the earlier stages, do some more empathising, consider your problem definition. Does this solve the problem that you wanted to solve for the people that you're working with? Alternatively, we might move straight on to the final two stages to conduct this evaluation. When it comes to prototyping, this may be making and testing physical models or running a pilot to test out a new service. However, I also want to introduce you to a model that you can use to evaluate your innovations. This model is called the triple bottom line. So in business or accounting, the bottom line usually refers to profit. How much money are they bringing in and how much are they spending? However, this model, the triple bottom line, argues that it's not only cash that we should be thinking about, but our impact on society, people, and environmental sustainability, or planet. This means that the triple bottom line is a tool that you can use to evaluate your impact and success, both economically, environmentally, and socially. Through measuring and considering our triple bottom line, we acknowledge that these three things are interlinked. By looking after your people, employees, customers, suppliers, the wider community, you are likely to save money by building loyalty and repeat customers, less employee turnover and fewer HR disputes, and ultimately more goodwill. Similarly, looking after the planet can have the same effect. Some things may be more expensive, but you can find other ways where you may be able to use fewer resources, which might save you money, as well as meaning you have to think more creatively, which could improve your innovations and, as a result, your profits. The triple bottom line fits in really well with the design thinking concept because it can be used at any stage of the process, both as an evaluation tool when you're prototyping and testing, or even right from the beginning to help you empathise or identify a problem and pick the best solutions that meet all three of these goals. So we've introduced you to the concept of design thinking, and you can absolutely use these tips to maximise your chances of starting a great business or becoming an entrepreneur or an innovator. However, I also want to encourage you to use design thinking, and particularly innovation and creativity, when it comes to your own personal development and career. And so this final set of tips will help you to do just that. So the first step is empathy. You can use the Empathise principles to understand and define your goals, motivations, and strengths. Ask yourself open questions. Pay attention to the times in your life you have been happiest or most motivated, and keep an open mind when you're doing so. What do these say about me and what I might be looking for in a future role. Empathizing isn't only about asking yourself questions, but taking the chance to explore and test out your theories and ideas by remaining curious and asking questions of others. Visit sites like Glassdoor or LinkedIn, attend employer events, or think about building your digital network or following companies of interest in the sectors that you're interested in on social media. All of these things will help you to identify and define your goals, figuring out if something is for you. That said, do keep an open mind. It's all too easy, as we've seen, to cast off ideas without giving them a chance or narrow down your options artificially before you've explored them. When it comes to ideating around your career, I'm not suggesting you approach your job search in an illegal or immoral way. But it is worth thinking back to the core of tip 3, which was all about removing creative barriers. So hop back to the empathy stage and make sure that you've carried out enough research on what a role is like before you cast it off. You might not be inspired by the title of the job itself, but if you click on that link, read a little bit more about it, you might see that it comes to life for you. And don't artificially limit yourself by only applying for jobs with companies you heard of, because those will be the more competitive ones. You need to dig under the surface, find the opportunities with businesses that you've not come across before, because other people won't have too, and these will provide you with many more opportunities. Equally, don't limit yourself to roles in obvious sectors. For example, if you want to go into finance, you don't need to apply to a finance company. Schools need a finance team, and they also need people in HR or IT. And so do water treatment plants and hospitals, and that small local business that you'd never heard of until you saw the advert. Keep an open mind and go off the beaten track with your ideas, and your chances of success will be much higher. In terms of prototyping, you can treat each application or job interview as a prototype that you're testing out. Remember, you only need to secure one job, so treat rejections and failures as part of your journey. Iterate and make small changes each time based on your experiences, by asking for feedback and learning on the way. And remember, if you don't receive any rejections, then you're probably not being ambitious enough with your job search. And the final step is test. Remember, design thinking is not a linear process, and neither is your career. In fact, Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis talk about ditching the idea of the career ladder and instead embracing your squiggly career. Don't be afraid to return to ideas you previously cast off. Perhaps you once thought about going into teaching or training as a coder. It's never too late to try again. Seek experiences and grasp opportunities. Build your network, talk to people and ask questions. All of these things will help you test out the options and refine your ideas before you work out what is right for you. So whether you are a budding entrepreneur or have already started a small business, whether you're a student wanting to make the most of your time at university, or a graduate ready to take the next step and prototype your career journey, take notes of the principles of design thinking, as you never know where innovation can take you. Thank you for listening.